Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. The 1922 E120 American Caramel set is one of the more iconic candy card issues for a variety of reasons. The set not only boasts numerous stars, but most of the cards in the set are quite affordable. The set features all of the era's Major League stars, including numerous Hall of Famers, with teams broken down alphabetically with their respective league. The set is evenly represented by 15 players from each of the 16 teams. The set is anchored by Eddie Collins, Tris Speaker, Tai Cob, Babe Ruth, George Sisler, Walter Johnson, Grover Alexander, Piie Trainer, and Rogers Hornsby. Fronts include tinted images with the player's name, position, and team. An action shot of the player is displayed inside a decorative oval-shaped frame. Backs include the player's team checklist. One unique aspect of the set is that each team has its own frame design. The cards are found with both green and beige tan tints. American Leaguers had beige tan cards, while green was used for the National League. The green is light and can be mistaken for purely a black and white card with a quick glance. At 2 inches by 3¼ inches, the cards are significantly larger than most of the earlier candy issues that preceded it. Featuring 240 cards in the set, it is a massive release. It is in fact the largest e-card set produced. One very notable thing with this set is that it is common to find them with back damage. Many of these have significant paper loss on the reverse, and there's a good reason for that. American Caramel actually created albums for these cards so that collectors could keep their collections in them. Unfortunately, like most albums of the day, that meant gluing the cards directly onto the pages. In the years to follow, collectors began removing these cards from the album pages or other scrapbook pages also used to keep cards. In doing so, they left parts of the cards on the pages, and backs of the cards suffered from paper loss, which has obviously hurt the value. In this video, I'm going to show the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1922 American Caramel set based on their PSA 1 values. I'll also give the values of those cards in higher grades, as well as the population count of those grades. Now, as a side note, because some cards have very low population counts, the values in some grades might not reflect current prices, since it may be a year or two or even more since a copy in that grade has been sold. In those cases, the price shown for the card is from the most recent sale in VCP's database. Now, before I get to the top 10, here are the cards that just missed the top 10. At number 15, the Carl Mays card. At number 14, the Bill Southworth card. At number 13, the Bill Wambsgans card. At number 12, the Joe Sewell card. And at number 11, the Walter Johnson card. So which cards made the top 10 list? Let's go find out. Coming in at number 10, we have the Ross Youngs card. This is actually a misspelling. They dropped the S in his last name. In a PSA 1, there have been 4 graded copies with a VCP price of $178. There have been 4 graded a PSA 2. The last sale was at $200. There have been 5 graded a PSA 3. The last one selling for $516. There have been 6 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $330. There's been 1 graded a PSA 5. The only PSA 5 sale in VCP's database took place in August of 2019 through REA and sold for $480. Now, there has been 1 graded a PSA 6, but there have been no reported sales of that 1 PSA 6 in VCP's database. and there has not been any graded a PSA 7 or 8. And just like every card on this top 10 list, there's not been a PSA 9 or 10 graded copy of the Ross Young's card. At number 9, we have the Piie Trainer card. In a PSA 1, there have been 3 graded copies with a VCP price of $188. There have been 2 graded at PSA 2, but there have been no reported sales of either of those 2 copies in VCP's database. There have been 4 graded a PSA 3, the last one sold for $331. There have been 6 graded a PSA 4, the last one sold for $1,700. There have been 3 graded a PSA 5, the last one sold for $407. There have been 1 graded a PSA 6, the last one sold for $565. And there's been 1 graded a PSA 7. The only PSA 7 sale in VCP's database took place in November of 2015 through Heritage and sold for $896. And there's actually been 1 graded a PSA 8, but there have been no reported sales of that 1 PSA 8 copy in VCP's database. At number 8, we have the Ray Shulk card. In a PSA 1, there have been 3 graded copies with a VCP price of $225. There have been 6 graded at PSA 2, the last one sold for $148. There have been 6 graded a PSA 3, the last one sold for $83. There haven't been any graded a PSA 4. There have been 5 graded a PSA 5. The last PSA 5 sale took place in January of 2018 through eBay and sold for $250. There has been 1 graded a PSA 6, but there have been no reported sales of that copy in VCP's database. And there has not been a PSA 7 or 8 graded copy of the Ray Shulk card. At number 7, we have the Frank Home Run Baker card. In a PSA 1, there have been 6 graded copies with a VCP price of $238. There have been 4 graded a PSA 2. The last one sold for $401. There have been 5 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $283. There have been 6 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $129. There have been 3 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $800. There have been 2 graded a PSA 6. The last PSA 6 sale took place in April of 2015 through Greg Goosen and sold for $270. And there has not been a PSA 7 or 8 copy graded of the Frank Home Run Baker card. At number 6, we have the Stanley Kowalski card. In a PSA 1, there have been 4 graded copies with a VCP price of $245. There have been 5 graded at PSA 2. The last one sold for $477. There have been 2 graded at PSA 3. The last one sold for $159. There have been 4 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $135. There have been 3 graded a PSA 5. The last PSA 5 sale took place in June of 2020 through Sterling Sports and sold for $900. There has been 1 graded a PSA 6, but there have been no reported sales of that copy in VCP's database. And there has not been a PSA 7 or 8 graded copy of the Stanley Kowalski card. At number 5, we have the Grover Cleveland Alexander card. In a PSA 1, there have been 8 graded copies with a VCP price of $315. There have been 3 graded a PSA 2. The last one sold for $400. There have been 6 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $647. There have been 2 graded at PSA 4. The last PSA 4 sale took place in March of 2019 through eBay and sold for $480. There has been one graded a PSA 5, but there have been no reported sales of that copy in VCP's database. There's not been a PSA 6 graded copy, although there has been a PSA 7 graded copy, just one, and there have been no reported sales of that copy either in VCP's database. And there has not been a PSA 8 graded copy of the Grover Cleveland Alexander card. At number 4, we have the Leon Goose Goslin card. In a PSA 1, there have been 3 graded copies with a VCP price of $480. There have been 6 graded a PSA 2, the last one sold for $110. There have been 3 graded a PSA 3, the last one sold for $105. There have been 5 graded a PSA 4, the last one sold for $587. There have been 1 graded a PSA 5 and 1 a PSA 6, but neither of them have reported any sales in VCP's database. There haven't been any graded a PSA 7, but there has been a PSA 8 graded copy. The only PSA 8 sale in VCP's database took place in September of 2009 through Huggins and Scott and sold for $823. At number 3, we have the Rogers Hornsby card. In a PSA 1, there have been 4 graded copies with a VCP price of $800. There have been 6 graded a PSA 2, but there have been no reported sales of any of those copies in VCP's database. There have been 3 graded a PSA 3, the last one sold for $317. There have been 6 graded a PSA 4, the last one sold for $700. There have been 2 graded a PSA 5, but there have been no reported sales of either of those copies in VCP's database. There have been 3 graded a PSA 6. The last PSA 6 sale took place in May of 2024 through Heritage and sold for $1,980. And there has not been a PSA 7 or 8 graded copy of the Rogers Hornsby card. At number 2, we have the Tai Cob card, and if you notice another misspelling, they dropped the second B in his last name. In a PSA 1, there have been 5 graded copies with a VCP price of $1,722. There have been 11 graded a PSA 2. The last one sold for $1,925. There have been 5 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $1,380. There have been 7 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $4,446. There have been 3 graded a PSA 5. The only PSA 5 sale in VCP's database took place in October of 2017 through eBay and sold for $1,725. There have been 2 graded a PSA 6, but neither of those cards have any reported sales in VCP's database. And there has not been a PSA 7 or 8 graded copy of the Tai Cob card. And at number 1, yes, it's the Babe Ruth card. In a PSA 1, there have been 9 graded copies with a VCP price of $7,600. There have been 4 graded a PSA 2. The last one sold for $2,000. There have been 10 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $12,402. There have been 9 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $34,200. There have been 4 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $31,986. There has been 1 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $14,340. There haven't been any graded a PSA 7, but there have been 2 graded a PSA 8. The only PSA 8 sale in VCP's database took place in April of 2023 through SCP Auctions and sold for $166,818. But there you go, the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1922 American Caramel set. As always, would love to know what you think about the set and the cards that made the top 10 list. And stay tuned for next week's episode, in which I take a look at the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1915 Cracker Jack set. And if you've missed either of the last 2 episodes in this series, you can check them out right here. With that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.